Here to discuss Ebola and the public health threat both in Africa and quite possibly here in the American continent is our friend Dr. Jane Orient, the executive director of the Association of American Physicians and Surgeons, and she's checking in from my old Arizona home. Dr. Jane, it is good to have you back on America's Forum.
Well, it's good to get up early in the morning to be with you.
Yes, bless your heart. We should note for the record that, my goodness, it's only what, a quarter till 7, coming up on a quarter till 7 out in Arizona. So we do appreciate your early rising. And of course, this whole notion of Ebola has kept a lot of medical professionals awake. Now the talk of this Canadian vaccine, what is your take on this in terms of it being freed up and in terms of getting more of it to help in Africa?
Well, I hope that it works. But something that we're not talking about, quite apart from this terrible public health disaster in Africa, is that back in 1999, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention classified hemorrhagic fever viruses, of which Ebola is one, as a Category A biological warfare agent. Ebola has been talked about for a long time, and not just talked about and not just written about by science fiction writers, but it's actually been weaponized by the former Soviet Union and Russia, and according to this article in JAMA from 2002, by the United States. It's really very ideal for a biological warfare agent. It kills fast, it's extremely contagious, and the mortality rate, it could be as much as 90%.
Now, Jane, as you raise these red flags, and we have spoken with others about the weaponization of Ebola, and a lot of people from the intelligence community have tried to soft pedal it, saying, well, to use this would be self-destructive for those who would use it. But it's interesting, as you trace the history, including an article in the Journal of the American Medical Association, you're saying that the United States has already done work to weaponize Ebola?
According to this 2002 article, and I've seen pictures of Soviet warheads that were modified for biological use that had little bomblets in it containing Marburg virus, which is a relative of the Ebola virus.
Well, this discussion, it is sobering to say the least, but it leads to the obvious question, given the fact that the Islamo-fascists are working to try to develop any type of weapon at their disposal. What is your take on the possibility of a group like ISIS, or in Africa, given the fact that that's where we're seeing the Ebola, Boko Haram, or one of the other Islamo-fascist organizations getting its hands on Ebola virus to weaponize? Do they have the technological wherewithal to do something like that?
I understand that even the Soviets were not able to weaponize Ebola from the standpoint of making it possible to disseminate through a warhead, but there are much lower technological means. Hey, what about sending an infected person into New York by airplane, or have him walk across the Mexican border before he gets really sick and disseminate it that way? The U.S. Public Health Service is really not prepared for something like this. Our hospitals are not prepared for something like this. Alarms are not going out to physicians as to what to look for in someone who might be infected with one of these dreadful viruses. And I think it's time that we paid attention to what's been written about for more than a decade.
Well, there seems to be a real gap between, quote, awareness and implementation on a variety of public health fronts. As you mentioned, sending someone across the border, obviously we've seen all these different diseases coming in with the juveniles from Central America who are coming into the country. There is a real problem here at home, but if we could, in the 2 minutes remaining, if you want to comment on that, fine, but I do want to get back to what's happening in Africa, Dr. Jane Orient, in terms of the vaccine and the Canadian availability of the vaccine on a public health basis there in Africa.
Well, let's hope that the vaccine works. It can't possibly have been tested really in an Ebola outbreak before, but 1,000 doses, what does that mean when you have millions of people who might be infected? You know, this outbreak in Africa is different from the ones that have been controlled in the past because it is in 3 major cities, not just in communities that are adjacent to the jungle.
And with that in mind, the notion of, quote, medical ethics or public health triage, what type of standard would they have to come up with if there are only 1,000 doses of the vaccine?
They'll probably give it to the people who are taking care of the patients. I understand that more than 100 physicians and nurses have been killed by Ebola, and are many of them have fled and are not available to work at all. So I think that that will probably be the highest priority.
Well, we take a look at that. And in the minute and a half remaining, in terms of health policy and regulation, there has been criticism in our own nation on a variety of pharmaceutical products that come out that the FDA just takes too long to offer approval. When we take a look at ZMapp, the drug being fashioned in the United States to deal with Ebola, is there still a bog down of regulation in dealing with these kinds of drugs?
Well, certainly there is, and you could argue, well, it's an untested drug, but the only way to test it is in an Ebola outbreak, and that's what we have now. So we're going to wait 20 years and maybe allow it to be used then. I would say we desperately need to make all of these things available as quickly as possible to people who are going to die without them.
Well, Dr. Jane Orient, as always, you offer some interesting questions and some sobering answers to a variety of public health concerns. We thank you so much for your time. Thanks for getting up early in Arizona to join us this morning here on America's Forum.
Thank you, JD.
So we heard from the good doctor. She has real concerns. Do you share her concerns about the weaponization of Ebola, the failure here in this country to deal with other public health matters? Why don't you tweet me your comments at Newsmax TV, hashtag America's Forum. You can also visit newsmaxtv.com/comment, and don't forget Facebook. Our faces are coming right back.